I can outrun any man over 120 kilos over 20 metres, guaranteed. I said, look, you want me to have a game? When my knee's better, I'll come back and have a game. And he was laughing, and I said, no, I'm serious. If you want me to come and do a bit, I'll come and do a bit. I'd love to. I think when someone does something big from your area, like I'm only speaking for myself personally, but it kind of flips something in your mind where you're like, oh, they're doing it, but like, I can do it as well.
This week's guest could soon be one of Britain's sporting superstars. Tom Aspinall grew up in a rugby league family. Now he's one of the biggest names in UFC. But does he fancy a return to his roots?
This is Impact. Welcome to the official Rugby League World Cup podcast.
Well, Tom, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for inviting us to your dad's garage. I should probably explain to the people who are listening to this that we are in what is essentially a padded cell. This is where you learn all the arts, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, like you say, it's a bit padded cell-esque. It is kind of small. So obviously you need a bit more than this, but we have done a lot of training here over the years for sure, definitely, yeah.
This is, I mean, every sportsman or woman has got the place where they began their career. So this must feel like home for you, and this is where it's all kind of mushroom from, isn't it?
This is it. Everyone's always amazed when they come in here, like, oh, it's brilliant. And I spent that much time in here over the years.
Happy memories.
I don't like the place that much, to be honest. I don't want to stay there. I like it for stuff like this, but I don't like training. I've trained that much in this tiny little space that I've done enough. I don't want to train in here anymore.
Oh, you won't be training at the moment because you've just had a knee operation.
Yes.
Briefly tell us how your rehab's going.
The rehab is actually not going just yet. Today's actually, funny enough, today's the first day that I'm going to see the physio today. So I'm 4 weeks post-surgery. So I've had to completely rest it for 4 weeks. And today is the day that I'll find out what I need to do rehab-wise and how long it's going to take to come back and all that kind of stuff. So today is an important day for me.
For those who don't know, what happened?
Not the best moment in my career. Let's say it like that. Basically, like any other athlete, I've had a long-term injury for years, like for 5 years. I've been suffering with this injury, and it just so happened in my last fight, 15 seconds in, so the fight wasn't even going really yet. The injury decided to give up on me in front of 22,000 people, home fans, and millions watching around the world. So it wasn't my best moment of my career, but this is unfortunately part of professional sport. Injuries happen, so we're going to rehab it and come back better.
From a rugby league context, I mean, we look at the Wigan captain, Liam Farrell, who in the last couple of days has got a knee injury now, might miss the World Cup. That mindset to get over an injury like that, and you can empathise with him, I guess, in terms of what he must be going through now, but it's a bit of a lonely place, isn't it?
Definitely, but I'm only speaking like when I put myself out there to compete in like the most dangerous contact sport there is. Sometimes it's not like you expect it. You don't go in there thinking, oh, I'm going to get injured this time, but you kind of have to expect it to a degree. Like there's a lot of impact in my sport. The same with rugby league. Like we're big guys bashing into each other on a regular basis. So the probability of getting injured is unfortunately quite high. So hopefully this will be my one and only serious injury in my career, and we're going to come back and do good stuff.
Yeah. You grew up here in Atherton, this is rugby league country, isn't it? Wigan's just up the road. St Helens not too far away. Lee's 2 miles down the road. When you were a kid growing up, was it all about doing what you're doing now, or how much of an interest did you take in rugby league? Because your dad was heavily involved in it as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I have played a bit of rugby myself. Never played union, only league, because like you say, this is like a rugby league area heavily. I really enjoy rugby. Like it's the closest. I love fighting. Like fighting's my thing. I love anything physical. Like I enjoy it. So I've been involved in rugby a little bit myself. I still watch it. Like when it's on, I'll make time to watch it, and I enjoy it. So yeah, I'm a big supporter of any contact sport. I like any where you have to put your body and your mind on the line. Like I like that kind of stuff.
Your father had a relationship with Shaun Wane when he was younger.
That's right.
Can you explain that?
I think they used to play together, him and Shaun. I think my dad's a little bit older than Shaun, actually. My dad's...
a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, my dad's 58, so I'm not sure how old Shaun is, but old guys anyway, nonetheless. But they used to play together. My dad was like the older guy in the team. Shaun was like the up-and-coming guy. I think my dad was more of a senior player and he was more of like an up-and-comer. So, yeah, they know each other from being children, basically.
And then he's been in and worked with clubs such as Wigan, Salford, coaching in that aspect of the fighting aspect of the grappling aspect that you see in rugby league all the time. So there are similarities in terms of what you do and what a lot of the pros are doing.
I mean, there's definitely similarities because you're talking about body mechanics really and how to control a person's body mechanics, essentially. Like you say, my dad's been involved with Salford and Wigan, and like me myself, I've been down to a couple of sessions and stuff, and it's actually very similar. Like obviously, there's a ball involved, and there's more than one. You're talking about rugby league. There's more than one person, whereas fighting's literally just one-on-one. But it's body mechanics. It's how to control the other person, how to put the person on the floor, and essentially stop them from moving as quickly as possible, which runs parallel to my sport.
For me, I would never get involved in that. First of all, because I'm too skinny, and secondly, because I probably wouldn't have the ability to do it. How is it similar, that dynamic in terms of wrestling someone off the ball or getting them to the ground?
Well, skinniness that doesn't have anything to do with it. But there's some people who are the best fighters in the world and they've got no fat and no muscle on them. They're just dead skinny. A lot of it's just technique and being aware of where your body is and being aware of where their body is. Like basic grappling techniques most of the time can like make sure that you can control the other person well. That's what rugby tackling is like. It's very similar to like jiu-jitsu or wrestling. Like you got to put the other person on the back. You got to be aware of where the hips are. You got to be aware of where the feet are on the floor, pushing up and trying to roll to the front and stuff. And you've got to be able to position your body in a way that stops them from moving, basically.
The greatest rugby league players, rugby union players as well, the way in which they offload the ball when they're in the tackle, that separates the cream from the rest. That's not something you have to worry about, I guess, in your sport. But do you see the skill level involved as well as the physicality and how they compare and contrast?
Definitely. I mean, when you're talking about like being skinny and not being like, that's pretty irrelevant, really, because there's technique involved in both sports. There's so much technique involved. Right. Like when you're tackling someone, it's not just like who's the biggest and strongest who gets them to the floor. Like it helps, but there's also a lot of technique involved in how to control the other person, when to hit, when to, how much force to use on certain points of the body and all that kind of stuff. Very similar, like the parallel sports, really, when it comes to that kind of thing. So
you've been in and trained a little bit with the Wigan players, and you know a few of the players who are in the England squad.
I know them a little bit. We're not like best friends or anything, but I know they are. They know who I am when we see each other.
I bet they would fancy getting you on the rugby pitch.
I'd gladly have a game.
Yeah.
I guarantee if I get a ball and I'm running it for someone full blast, they're not going to stop me, and I'm dead serious about that. If I get a ball and I'm running at a guy, a rugby player who doesn't know the stuff that I know about grappling, I guarantee they won't be able to get me to the floor.
We should give Matt P a call. Wigan head coach.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I told him this last. I seen Shaun Wane last. I told you like off camera. I seen Shaun Wane at the train station. I was going to London to get my stitches out of my knee, and he was going down he was doing some talks and stuff like that. He said, and I said, look, you want me to have a game when my knee's better? I'll come back and have a game. And he was laughing, and I said, no, I'm serious. If you want me to come and do a bit, I'll come and do a bit. I'd love to.
He has said in the build-up to this World Cup that the bigger, the more physical England are, the more the better they'll have a chance. Would you agree with him in terms of that physicality, that size thing matters so much now? Well,
it depends to a degree, because if you're completely clueless skill-wise, I don't think it really matters how big you are. But obviously, these rugby players and stuff, especially if you're playing for your country, you're obviously very well versed skill-wise as well. Yeah. So if they're experienced, they know the techniques, they know exactly what to do and when to do it, and they're big and strong as well. Like that just gives them a massive advantage. So when it comes to rugby, for sure, like the bigger and stronger they are, the veterans, aren't they? Like they've been doing this all their life, so They know exactly when to do it, exactly where to do it, and if they're big and strong as well, it'll definitely give them a massive advantage.
As somebody who has never lifted a weight in their life, I'm curious as to the regime that you have to go through to get yourself into fighting shape, and perhaps how that contrasts to professional rugby players, rugby union, rugby league. What do you have to do, and how does it compare and contrast in terms of what it does for your body shape and that discipline you have to go through?
So it all kinds of it depends on a lot of things when it comes to my sport. See, me, my fighting style, I'm very mobile for a bigger guy. So for me personally, I don't want to be too muscly. Whereas I know a lot of rugby players, they're really heavy on the weights, and a lot of MMA fighters are as well. But it just depends on your style. Like, I only really lift weights when I'm in camp training for a fight. Like now it's different because I'm injured. I'm lifting weights nearly every day. But when I'm training for a fight, I'll lift weights like 2-3 times a week maximum, because I can't afford to be sore from weights to then take away from my mobility, my martial arts training, my sparring and all that kind of stuff. Like, I need to make sure that I'm still nice and loose for the sparring, because like I say, my style's really mobile. I don't want to take away from that. But
it's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You need to be, and this is something that I'm still learning. Do you know what I mean? I'm not like, I know everything now. As Shaun said about his team, like, I still need to be big and strong to be able to handle other guys who are big and strong as well. So it's a balance. I've got to be able to balance it a lot, and like I say, it's something that I'm still learning now. Even though I am one of the best fighters in the world at this point, I'm still. I think the day you stop learning, that's when you start going downhill a little bit. So I like to test things and try and figure out what's best for me.
We often hear players say that they're playing through an injury, or they're playing at 85-90%. You were saying yourself you've been carrying an injury before that last fight and got injured. It's a simplistic question, but is it a good idea to be playing whilst you're injured?
Not really, but I can only speak for myself. I'm a prize fighter. Like, if someone offers me a fight, I struggle to say no to it, because this is what I love doing. This is the way I feed my family. This is the way I make money. And not even just that, like, I absolutely love competing. Like, I love competing. I don't do this sport. I do it for fun, of course, but I do it because I like going in there in front of millions of people and doing what I love. Like, I absolutely love that. So for me personally, that's difficult for me to say, actually, I'm injured. Because with MMA, it's a little bit different. I've been really active recently, and I've been fighting like 3-4 times a year, which for a heavyweight, especially in the top 10 in the world, is really rare. So I've been really lucky to be able to do that. So I wanted to keep that going. So I wanted to kind of push the injury to the side for a little bit, but maybe I just got a little bit greedy. Who knows? And I needed the time off, but we're going to be back soon. We're going to be back and get things going again.
Following on from the chat about your weight regime, your diet as well, is that something that as you grow as a fighter, you're learning how to manage that and balance that? And I mean, it's all about rehydration and nutrition for these top rugby league players. You must presumably have to really monitor what you're eating.
I'm big on diet now. I'm really big, and again, this is something that I'm learning as I go, because until a few years ago, diet didn't really matter to me, to be honest. I thought it was a bit of a facade, to be honest with you. And then when I got in the UFC and started fighting at the world level, I started thinking about different, it's all about little percentages being a high level athlete. If you can get 1% better, sometimes that's just that 1% better than your opponent as well. And in terms of rugby, you're that 1% better than the other guys on the pitch, and that's what I'm trying to be, that 1% better. And I employed a nutritionist. I brought a nutritionist on board, and he's literally changed my life. He's not just changed my career, he's changed my whole relationship with food, the way I recover, the way I sleep, my mood, my relationships I have with people. And I think that all leads down to what I put inside my body. Like, even now, I'm not training. I'm doing a bit of weights at the moment because that's all I can physically do. But my diet is on point. I make sure that my diet is good. What I put inside my body is it's paramount. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really important what you put inside your body, not just as an athlete, but as a person, in terms of everything.
Do you think that athletes in general now, that's how it works in terms of they're monitoring everything, because they see athletes across other sports taking that extra step, that extra level. And we saw, Cristiano Ronaldo 10, 15 years ago sort of pioneered it in terms of everything that he ate and everything he drank and the way in which he looked after himself. And he's still going into his late 30s. Do you think that all high performance athletes are like that now? Because the England team will be like that now.
I mean, we're way more, as athletes, we're way more educated now than we were like 25 years ago. We're really lucky, to be honest, because like even stuff like this injury, 25 years ago, this could have been a possible career ender. Like, things are coming on so much in terms of rehab, recovery, obviously nutrition, all that kind of stuff. Like, we're so lucky that we have stuff like the internet and social media and YouTube and stuff like that. Like, we can actually learn ourselves without even, we need experts to bring them on, but we can also go out and we have resources to be able to find out about stuff like this ourselves. And constantly every day I'm trying to learn new ways, like we just mentioned, to be that 1% better in everything, in every aspect of, not even just as an athlete, but as a healthy person. I'm trying to be better every day.
You were talking about some of the players that you've come across, some of the England players and the Wigan players. So you mentioned Sam Tompkins, England captain, and the career he's had. Do you, as an athlete at the top of your game, look up to someone like him and what he's achieved? And is he someone that's almost like a role model to you?
Well, I couldn't get inspiration from any athletes, you know what I mean, in any sport, because it takes a lot to be a professional athlete. You have to dedicate your whole life to this. But someone like Sam, he's done it. He's been at the top of his game for a long time, hasn't he, Sam? And he's been all over the world doing it. I know he went... Did he go to New Zealand for a bit, or Australia, and he played over there, and now he's at Catalans, and he's really doing his thing nationally and internationally. So, and he's a local lad as well. So I definitely look up to. I think when someone does something big from your area, like, I'm only speaking for myself personally, but it kind of flips something in your mind where you're like, oh, they're doing it. What, like, I can do it as well. That's the way I look at it. We just had Leon Edwards, who's a UK guy, and he's just the second guy to win a world title in the UFC, and first one was Mike Bisping, and he was like way before I was fighting professionally. But now Leon Edwards is like, I know him personally, like he's in my era. So when I see someone like Leon going out there and winning a world title he's from Birmingham, but he's from the same country as me, it just gives me like, it's like, well, we're from the same place. Like, I can do it as well. He's done it. They say Sam's doing it. He's doing his thing, and I can do it as well.
Take you back to that fight a couple of months ago. You're headlining in your own country, 20,000 fans. And of course, it was a huge disappointment for you. But to walk out in front of a home crowd, what was that like? Because England and the home nations, they're all going to be here in the World Cup on home soil with that home backing. How much of a difference maker is that?
It's massive. And I don't think a lot of people don't put enough stock in that. Like, it's big, and it can do a couple of different things to you though. Like, you need to be prepared for like both sides of the coin. It can make you or break you, and you need to make sure that you're in the right mindset to be able to deal with that, because like I say, you can go both ways with it, especially being a main event. Do you know what I mean? There's more. That's my second time main eventing in London at home, so. It's definitely different to being like a lower guy down the card early on that no one's really that bothered about. Being a main event is way different, and like I said, you need to be ready for that, because when you've got home fans and there's loads of them and they're all cheering for you, it's different to any other experience.
What are those England players gonna feel like when they're walking out at St James's Park, 50,000 opening game against Samoa?
If they've got a good mindset, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're working on that mindset and the team stuff every day. I'm sure it'll fuel them. It'll definitely fuel them, because that gives you a drive that I didn't. I can only speak for myself, but I didn't feel personally fighting in other places, because it's just different when you got people screaming for you. It makes or breaks you, and I'm sure these guys are in a great mindset, and it'll fuel them.
Tom, you mentioned earlier about how it inspires you when somebody locally does something really extraordinary in the world of sport, and it makes you think, oh, I could do that too. I was walking down the street on the way here, and there's obviously still some of the remnants of the Jubilee celebrations up, and there was, in a shop there was a big picture of the Queen. Next to the picture of the Queen there was a big picture of you. Do you feel like royalty when you walk around Atherton, and do you get recognised? How do you cope with that?
I do get recognised, but funny enough, in Atherton, I don't get recognised. I know people do recognise me, but they just don't speak to me as much because
maybe they're scared of you.
No. They used to be like I get recognised here and there. People come over, ask for a picture and stuff. But if when I go outside Atherton, people come over way more than they would because people see me every day. You know, I'm around doing everyday stuff all the time, and people like to say a few weird stuff. Like a few times I'll be like in the shop and people come over and like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, just buying something, mate, the same as you. Exactly the same. Why would I not be in the shop buying something?
I guess the reason I asked that is because there's a good chance, if it goes well, say for the England players this autumn, the men's team or the women's team or the wheelchair team, they could suddenly become public property again very, very soon. And they'll be headline big stars, you know, in this country, which is perhaps not something that we've seen in rugby league for quite some time. Dealing with that fame, adjusting to that public recognition, how have you handled that?
I have a bit of a unorthodox. I wouldn't say I'm like really famous or anything, but I'm definitely more well known than the average person. But it was a bit weird for me because my first couple of UFC fights, well, my first 3 or 4 UFC fights actually were in the pandemic, and the first 2 were literally with no crowd in Abu Dhabi. There was nobody there, literally nobody. There was maybe like 30, 40 people in the whole building. So it was during the pandemic. We were all locked down and everything. So no one was really like allowed to go anywhere really. So I didn't really feel it apart from like social media. I didn't really feel it. And then as places started to open up, I started noticing like people start recognising me a little bit. And then obviously I've gone from fight to fight and then started building up the rankings and then broke into the top 15, then I started breaking into the top 10, top 5 and started main eventing and stuff. So it's just been a gradual build for me, you know what I mean? It's not like it will be for the rugby going from essentially 0 to 50,000 people and millions watching. Like it's going to be a big jump for them, but it's just something that I'm still adjusting to over time. Like it still blows my mind sometimes that people are shocked to see me or something. Like it's still a bit weird for me sometimes.
Well, you look at the rise of UFC in the public consciousness. The sport has skyrocketed in popularity over the years, and it's beginning to transcend wider society. How do you feel that perhaps that compares to rugby league, which has got such a hardcore following in so many different parts of this country, and of course in Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, but perhaps it's not reached that transcendent stage such as football? What do you think the lessons that the two sports can maybe learn from each other?
They're both, I wouldn't say they're like underground or niche or anything like that. They're well-recognised sports globally, but they're not as popular as sports like football or something like that, for example. But I think us as the athletes, we need to be ready to be good representations of our sports at all times. That's the way I see it for myself. Is like you need to be open to educating people at all times. Not just when you're in work mode. When you're taking your kids to swimming, you need to be ready to educate someone about your sport. That's the way I look at it anyway. You need to be open and honest with people about why they need to jump on the bandwagon and start enjoying it like everybody else.
And it's not just about being a character, for example, like Conor McGregor is perhaps well known around the world, not just for his feats in the ring, but also some of his antics outside the ring. It's not just about being a big character, it's about actually being a great representative of your sport as well.
Well, the character's great. They definitely help us out a lot. But me personally, I believe in being yourself at all times. And I think, like I said, you need to be ready to educate people in these sports when they start asking you questions. You can't just shut people down straight away. You need to be able to show the people that we are normal, hard-working people, and we want our sports to do good. Like we want to be good representations, and we want our sports to grow. Like I want this sport, I want like my sport of MMA. I want kids to want to do it, and I want to show kids that like, you know, it's a good sport to get into. You know, it's not a great thing to have no ambition and be hanging around street corners and going drinking every weekend. Like that's all great. You've got to be a kid as well and do that kind of stuff. But you know, if you want to be a UFC fighter or an MMA fighter and make a career out of it, like you can do it as well. And the same goes for rugby. Like there's role models over there as well where you want to have that person where it's like, right, he's doing it, I can do it as well. And I hope to be that for kids.
UFC is a terrific sport in terms of its inclusivity. We see the women's featherweight and middleweight belts. These are profiled on the same platforms as your fights. There's a lot of women getting into mixed martial arts in UFC. Obviously, with the Rugby League World Cup, you've got the men's, women's, and wheelchair tournaments on one platform for the first time ever. Both of these sports are highlighting why that inclusivity is so important, aren't they?
I think it's amazing now that women are getting involved with. Well, women have always been involved with professional sports, but I mean, the fact that they're getting paid right, first of all, they're getting the credit that they deserve because they put their bodies and their minds on the line just like we do. You know, we're no different to them; they're no different to us. They need to do exactly the same thing as we do in both sports, not just in rugby and fighting, but in every sport. It's all equal. So, in my opinion, it's great that they're getting the same recognition now that we are as well.
Have you spent much time with any of the MMA female fighters at all? And you know, who should we be looking out for in terms of the next big hope in this country?
I mean, it would be a shame not to mention Molly McCann. Molly McCann is she's fantastic. She brings a lot to the table, and she's pure aggression when she fights. So she's always like. She's pure entertainment, do you know what I mean? If you want to watch a good scrap, like, turn into a Meatball Molly fight, definitely.
Meatball Molly?
Yeah, that's a nickname, yeah, Meatball Molly.
What's your nickname?
I don't have one.
Yet?
I don't need one.
Can we give you one?
No.
There's some pretty scary nicknames in the heavyweight division.
Ones, but we don't need them. We don't need them.
You don't need them?
No, we don't need them.
I think you're being too modest here.
I avoid the nicknames. They're a bit corny, in my opinion.
We were talking about the similarities in rugby league and to MMA, and when you look at the featherweight champion, Alexander Volkanovski, who I think you've had some dealings with, he was a rugby league player. Could you see a lot of crossover there in terms of if there was someone who was playing the sport who thought, do you know what, actually I might be able to give MMA or a try? I
think definitely. I think the biggest difference is one's a team sport, one's an individual sport. That's the biggest difference. But when you actually break it down, it's a contact sport. Obviously, you need to be very fit and physical to do both sports. You definitely need a pretty decent level of toughness to be able to do both. Like, you need to be gritty and tough to be able to do both because it hurts and you're going to be exhausted in both. That's for sure. So there's a lot of crossover there. I think the biggest difference is one's a team sport. One's an individual sport, so once you like kind of get your head around that, I think it's pretty similar. Different mindsets if you're an individual athlete. You don't have that support network. Perhaps. I think the pressure is a fair bit greater if you're doing it individually. That's my opinion. There might be a few boys in the England dressing room who might have cause to debate that one with you. There's not that many. When you get knocked out in front of millions of people, there's not that many people to blame other than yourself. So. But I'm not saying that, I'm not downplaying the pressure of rugby league. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure that being a professional athlete at a high level brings a whole load of pressure that non-athletes can't understand. That's what I think anyway. That's my opinion. But I think that when you're doing it in this individual sport, it's a whole new level of scary that other people, non-fighters, don't understand. You're flexing the knee there, so we'll get to the. I know. I do feel for you. We're getting to the real crunch time now. That the squads have been picked for the tournament starts October 15th. Are you going to get to a few games now that you're going to be? Yeah, and I mean, we all hope that the home nations do really, really well. Of course, England, you'll be keeping a close eye on them. What do you think of their chances in the tournament? And I mean, what would it mean to have an England World Cup victory this year? It would be absolutely massive for England to be able to do that. We have really, really great players here. You know, we have players who go all over the world. You know, we got players who are over there in Australia doing the thing, and then all over the place. Like, we got great players, so it would be massive for the England team to win it. Definitely, the country as well. To get behind that England team, to get the snowball rolling. We saw the Lionesses and the success that they had in the summer and how that infiltrated into society. It can be the same thing with rugby league, can't it? I think we're a very passionate nation anyway. Like, we get behind our own a lot. this is something that I was saying when I was main event in London in my last couple of fights, is I was saying in the press conferences, like, I love fighting here because foreigners don't understand how passionate we are about our own people. Like, we like to tear our own people down as well at times, but like, we really, really get behind our own people a lot. And the international fighters coming over and the international players coming over, I don't think they quite have a grasp of that until they get here. So I think, you know, the England people are going to get behind the team massively.
Yeah, and 3 tournaments as well, possibly 3 England wins. That would certainly cause huge amounts of interest and an uptick in the sport, which we just want to see people participating in the sport as well. That's one of the most important things to come out of this tournament, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, there's going to be, for sure, a lot more exposure than there has been before. So hopefully a lot of people are going to get involved here. And
what's your prognosis then? When are we going to see you back in the octagon?
I don't know, because until... It's going to be next year for sure, at some point. Yeah, it's going to be next year. Like, we don't have long left of this year now. We're coming towards the end. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be next year, but I'm not going to rush back because I've been fighting with this injury for most of my career now. And I don't want to keep thinking that my knee is going to give up at some point. I want to make sure I'm 100% healthy coming back, because my plan is now I'm going to go and win the heavyweight championship of the world. That's my plan. And I want to do it at 100% health. Like, I can't have something in the back of my mind telling me that, oh, I can't do this in training today because I'm a knee. I can't do this technique because I'm a knee. And I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I want to make sure I'm 100% healthy and really give my all on winning that belt and having a go at that over the next few years. Well,
we wish you the very best of luck. We hope you achieve your goals, and we will let every rugby league coach in the land know that you are ready and willing to be
serious as well, you know. I'm not
to be a second row forward.
I'm serious. I'm pretty fast. Give me over 20 metres, I'm fast. Any more than that, I start getting a little bit. Slowing down a bit, but 20 metres, I'm good.
I think there's scope for a feature here, definitely.
I can outrun any man over 120 kilos over 20 metres. Guaranteed.
Right, we're going to get on the phone to Shaun Wane after this.
Okay.
Tom, pleasure. Enjoy the tournament.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.